The President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. We are going to hear the testimony of TCW 247. Court officer is now instructed to call in this witness to the courtroom. Good morning, Mr. Witness. What is your name, please? Response. Good morning, Mr. President and Your Honors. I am Hun Chun Lee. The President. Thank you, Mr. Chun Lee. How old are you this year? The President. Could you please repeat, but then wait until you see the red light on the mic before you proceed to respond. How old are you now, please? Response. I am 74 years old. Question. Mr. Chun Lee, where were you born? Response. I was born in Precho district of Kampong Cham province. Question. Where do you live now? Response. I now live at Chamkamon district, Tul Swai Prey 1. Question. What do you do for a living? The President, Mr. Witness, please wait until you hear the red light, please. Response. I am a pensioner. I had retired or was retired since 2004. Question. What are your parents' names? Response. My father is Hun Kien. He passed away. My mother is Sai Yun. She also passed away. Question. What is your wife's name and how many children do you have? Response. My wife passed away in 2007. We have 2 children, a daughter and a son. The President, thank you. Mr. Hun Chun Lee, according to the report by the greffier of the trial chamber, that you are not biologically related to any of the civil parties or parties to the proceeding, including the three accused persons, namely Mr. Kilsampon Nunjia and Ieng Sari. Is that correct? Response: yes, it is. The President: according to the same report, you had already taken an oath. Is that true? Response: yes, it is, Your Honor. The President: next, the Chamber would like to proceed to informing you of your rights as a witness before the Chamber. Mr. Hun Chun Lee, in your capacity as the witness before the Chamber, you can exercise your right against self-incrimination of witnesses. You can refuse to respond to any questions if you believe that in your response you would be incriminating yourself. And as the witness before the Chamber, you are to respond to all the questions put by parties to the proceedings, including those from the bench. As the witness, you shall only tell the truth, nothing but the truth. And this truth shall always be relevant to the events you have seen or experienced concerning the questions posed to you by parties to the proceedings and the bench. Do you understand this obligation and rights? Response: yes, I do, Mr. President. The President: thank you. Mr. Hun Chun Lee, have you ever given any interviews to any of the investigators from the Office of the Co-Investigating Judges of the ECCC? Response: no, I haven't, Your Honors. The President: thank you, Mr. Chun Lee. The Chamber wishes to inform to the prosecution that according to internal rules of the ECCC, Rule 91 bis, concerning the testimony of the witness, co-prosecutors will be allowed to pose questions to the witness before other parties. Both the prosecution and the lead co-lawyers for the civil party will have the whole day to put questions to the witness before us today. You may now proceed. Mr. Wayne Hort. Very good morning, Mr. President and Your Honors. Good morning to everyone and my colleagues in this courtroom. And good morning, Mr. Hun Chun Lee. From now on, please, I be allowed to address you as Lokru or Professor. Mr. Chun Lee, you may call me Mr. That's all, if you like. Co-prosecutor. Thank you, Mr. Chun Lee. Before I put some questions to you, with Mr. President leave, I would like to refer to document concerning the book you wrote about the life of a doctor. At that time, there was no proper ERN number in Khmer or English as yet. This book has been placed into the case file and given ERN number I have noted some of the pages of the book could be different from the actual pages of the book you wrote. Again, Mr. President and Your Honors, with your leave, I would like to put this book to Mr. Chun Lee for examination. The President, Mr. Co-Prosecutor, you may proceed, and Court Officer is now allowed to get the document over to the witness for examination. Co-Prosecutor, thank you, Mr. President. I would like to begin putting questions to Mr. Chun Lee as follows. Mr. Chun Lee, can you please tell us, the representatives of the prosecution, indeed I am Wayne Hort and my colleague on my right-hand side, Mr. Tariq Abdul Haq. I will be putting some questions concerning the book you wrote, the book that I have just referred a moment ago concerning the life of a doctor during the Khmer Rouge. When did you finish writing this book, please? Response. This book was published on 2 occasions. First published in the 19th of January 2006. That's first publication and edition, and the book in your hand is the first edition. Here is the second edition of my book. The same content maintained, but we have changed some wordings. This book finished written in 2010 for the second edition, and ERN number of the book has already been registered, and I have also offered 5 copies to the National Library. 2 of the copies have been delivered to the DC camp. Question: have you written the book on your own initiative, or you have referred to other people to assist you during your writing? The President, Mr. Witness, could you please hold on? Indeed, we are now using the simultaneous interpreting equipment, and that your message will be rendered into 2 other languages, which is French and English. So please observe some pause so that your message can be fully conveyed through this interpreting service. Response. I wrote in this book what I saw, what I heard, and I did not add things beyond the facts or the truth I have encountered during the Khmer Rouge regime. Almost all of my colleagues died except me. Question: when did you start writing the book? Response: during the Khmer Rouge regime, I started to take some notes already. I had a diary. However, because the Khmer Rouge searched my house on several occasions, I had to have them burned down, and I had to do my best to find a way to recollect the events, in particular the key events during that time. Question: now, we would like to know what happened during the 17th of April 1975. during this date? And prior to this date, what had you been doing? Response. Prior to 1975, which is the April 1975, I had joined the army and worked as the military physician at Badambong Hospital. Question. You said you served in the army. What kind of army was that? The army of Lono or other faction? Response. I worked for the Lono regime because each official was required to join the army, including the physicians. I had to join the army for a period of at least 2 years. And I was the lieutenant in rank. Question. As a soldier, how many people were serving as the physicians during that time in your group? Response. At the military hospital at Badambong, it was known also as the Hospital 403. There were about 30 medical personnel. Question. At your hospital, who were the patients? Response. At the military hospital, there were patients who only were the soldiers who wounded and got injured. Question. When you said they were soldiers, were these Lono soldiers or the soldiers of the Democratic Cambodia as well? Response. The patients were soldiers of the Lono's regime. Thank you. Next question. We will now proceed to the 17th of April 1975. Can you please describe to the chamber the events you still remember? Exactly what happened on the day of the 17th of April 1975? Response. At 7 a.m. of the 17th of April 1975, Phnom Penh Radio broadcast that General Mai Si-chon and Lunon, the brother of Lunon, announced that all soldiers, all Lunon soldiers across the country laid down their weapons. And then I heard a very frightening sound that a cadre of the Khmer Rouge said that the Cambodian Revolution Army won the victory through armed struggle, not through negotiations. The President, Mr. Co-Prosecutor, make sure your mic is activated, please. Mr. Co-Prosecutor, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, you are now having the book with you. Could you please look at ERN in Khmer, ERN starting with 00. That is referred to as the ERN number for the court purpose. Mr. Witness, here, look at this. I would like to read this number, and you can find it as follows: ERN 00678788. The President Court Officer is now instructed to assist the witness with these ERN numbers. Mr. Co-Prosecutor, make sure you activate your mic, and you can only refer to the witness as Mr. if you like. That's enough.
Thank you, Mr. President. The ER number of the page is 00678758 in Khmer, and in English 00369682, and there is no translation in French. You wrote in your book that on the 19th April 1975, that is the third day, the Khmer Rouge made an announcement that the Vietnamese people or all the Yuan people had to return to their country. Also on the same day, there was an order from the upper echelon to all the Lunal soldiers from the rank of the Major Lieutenant to gather at a Chinese school in the middle of the city. As for the soldiers in the lower rank, shall be gathered at South He Primary School near the new bridge. The soldiers came barehanded with no weapon, and they stayed that day and night at the gathering point. My question is the following. How did the Khmer Rouge make this announcement from the upper echelon? Response. The Khmer Rouge did not make any official announcement as we currently do. However, their announcement was indeed effective. In fact, we heard the announcement through other people. The announcement was that based on such announcement, rather, the Vietnamese people boarded the boat returning back to their country while they were escorted by the Khmer Rouge soldiers. But there was no official announcement. But as I said, it was nonetheless effective. Thank you. Let me touch upon a point of the gathering of the Lunal soldiers. How long did they stay at the gathering points? Response. Lunal soldiers ranking from the Major Lieutenant gathered at a Chinese school in the middle of the city, and those had a length below that gathered at the primary school near the new bridge. On the 23rd of April 1979, says the witness, at 5 a.m. there was a truck coming to pick all those military officers and all the public servants, all the heads of all departments from Battambang heading toward National Road number 5. As for the lower rank soldiers, below Major Lieutenant, they were transported by truck toward Pai Lin, and it was near the vicinity of Old Pong Mon on the way to the Kamping Pui water reservoir. Questioned. Initially, did you know the purpose of gathering all the Lunal soldiers? Response. They said that the soldiers ranking from Major Lieutenant up would be gathered to go to Phnom Penh in order to receive the Prince Sihanouk. And they did not to pack many food as the food would be provided en route. Questioned. What later was the fate of the military officers and all the Lunal civil servants? Did you know what happened to them? Response. I learned about their fate about 1 month later as I learned it through one of the drivers. He said the soldiers were transported to Thapade mountain and they were executed there. As for the lower rank soldiers below Major Lieutenant who were transported through Thailand, they were ordered to farm the land near O Pong Mon. Questioned. Do you know the numbers of the military officers and public servants who were executed or shot dead? Response. I cannot say for sure of the exact numbers. However, there were 5 truckloads. Questioned. My next questions will be on the military hospital. In your book, in the EN in Khmer is 00678761 to 62. And in English, 0036 96 83 to 84. In your book, do you describe about the killing of the physicians and the medical staff at Military Hospital 403 where you worked? Would you be able to describe the event again to the chamber? President Witness, please wait. The International Defense Council for Nuon Chea, you may take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning to everyone in and around the courtroom. My comments relate to the prior line of questioning that deal with the Lon Nol soldiers that were allegedly taken away from Battambang town. And the prosecutor has asked quite a number of questions, but has not asked the most important one, and that is whether this witness personally witnessed these events or whether he only heard about them. I know what the prosecution is going to say. The prosecution is going to say we will have a chance to question the witness on this specific topic. That is true, but I do think it's simply good practice to want to know how a witness obtains his knowledge. So I would invite the prosecution, and I cannot shape it as an objection, but I am requesting the prosecution to question the witness on the sources of knowledge. Did he personally witness these events, or did he only hear about them? I think it's also in the interest for the prosecution itself to lay that foundation, and it will clarify matters for all people in this courtroom.
Weinhut. Thank you, Defense Counsel, for his observation. When the time comes, my learned colleague can, of course, ask the question. As for the prosecution, our time is limited, and of course, we decide whatever we wish to question the witness. And in fact, in his document, he stated that more than 200 people were executed. And Mr. President, with your leave, I may resume my questioning. President, of course, you may. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, just then I asked you to make a description, as you stated in your book, regarding the killing of the 13 military personnel. President Witness, please wait until the microphone is operational. Witness. On the 20th of April 1975 at 8:30, the chief of the hospital, that is Colonel Dr. Tan Pop, convened all the medical personnel. He said that he just came from a meeting at the provincial town hall, and there was a requirement for all the medical staff to take a roster of duty day and night, and also to eat in the hospital in order to provide a better care to the patients. After that, the meeting ended and we went to our respective duty. At 5 p.m., I do not know what happened, but I had a strange and unsettling feeling. I was thinking of my two children, my two nephews, and my parents. As for my wife, she was still at Phnom Penh. So then I requested a leave from the colonel doctor, the head of the hospital, to return to my house. And next morning, that is the 21st of April 1975, the Khmer Rouge called all the medical staff with a rank from Major Lieutenant, totaling in 13, to board a vehicle in order to receive a group of the revolutionary medics. However, about 11 kilometers from the hospital at a location called Ommal, the vehicle took a turn to the side road, and then the medical staff were ordered to get off the vehicle and shot dead. I learned of this event later, because at night time on that day I could not sleep until morning, and in the early morning I walked to a civilian hospital where I used to work, and I entered a building, and then I lied on a bed and I fall asleep. And at 2 p.m. I heard a voice calling me, so I woke up and I saw a medical staff there, and the person said, I survived because the Khmer Rouge shot dead 13 medical staff at my rice field. And the person said the person only knew Tan Pok and not the rest. Thank you. Question. In such a situation, did you know the reason for the execution of the certain medical personnel? President, please wait a witness until the microphone is operational. Response. It is my understanding that it was the policy of the health policy of the Khmer Rouge. They would eliminate all the medical staff ranking from the major lieutenant, and later on it will be the turn of the civilian medical personnel. Question. Did you know from what level was the execution ordered? Response. I do not know, so I cannot respond to this question. They only talk about the upper Onka, but we did not know who that was. Question. What about the patients being treated at the hospital? After they executed all those expert medical staff, what happened to those patients? President, witness, please wait until the microphone is operational. Response. When I was told that those medical personnel who were my colleagues were executed, I felt compelled to walk through that hospital. That is the military hospital. And I was about to enter through the side entrance, and there was a soldier who grabbed hold of my hand and said, "Don't go in there because they killed all of us." Then I went to the front entrance. I wanted to get into the hospital as well, but another soldier there grabbed my hand and asked me not to go in. I tried to see if there were any other remaining medical personnel, but I did not. And I saw patients who were walking out of the hospital. Some were accompanied by their relatives, and some were put on a cart, a pedal cart. Question also related to this point. Can you tell us, after the killing of the 13 Lunal medical personnel, what happened to other hospitals in the area? Response. Could you please rephrase your question? Question. After the killing of the 13 medical experts and personal staff from that military hospital, what happened to the civilian hospital with those civilian medical staff and expert medical staff? What happened to them after the 17th April 1975? Response. As for the civilian hospital, they did not do anything yet. As for the patients, there were only patients leaving the hospital. There were no incoming patients. And not for long, the civilian personnel, medical personnel at the civilian hospital were executed starting from 1977. Question. In the book with the EN in Khmer 00678763, in English 00369685, you wrote that although the Phnom Penh radio stopped broadcasting, news spread among the people saying that Prince Norodom Sihanouk was coming back very soon from Beijing to Phnom Penh. At the same time, the Khmer Rouge disseminated orders to all senior government civil servants and to all military officers from the grade of first lieutenant, asking them to prepare for the journey by bus to Phnom Penh to greet Samdech O, that is Prince Father, at 5 a.m. on the morning of April 23, 1975. They stressed that there was no need to bring along too much luggage and that food was available during the travel. My question is, when the Khmer Rouge disseminated that information, how did they do it? President, witness, please wait. Consul Angodom, you may proceed. Angodom, thank you, Mr. President. I am not on my feet to express our objection, but I would request that the prosecution, when referring to that portion of the document, to have the document projected on the screen so that we can all see it. Wenhood, Mr. President, due to the strict time allocation, we do not have the luxury of time to do so. With your permission, I'd like to continue. President, yes, you may continue. Thank you, says Wenhood. Mr. Witness, allow me to repeat that portion again in case you cannot recall it well. Response. Allow me to say that the Khmer Rouge did not use any modern equipment for their dissemination of information or instructions. However, I still wondered, despite the lack of modern equipment, the information they disseminated seems to be very effective and went through very well. Therefore, on the 23rd of that month, the head of the departments, the senior military officers and public servants boarded the vehicle to Phnom Penh, as they were told to go and greet some that oh. And later on, I learned that they were taken and killed or executed by gunshots at Tapadai Mountain. Thank you. In your document ERN 00678769 and in English 00369689, you write that although the situation was known, the residents of Battambang was fearful and shocked in the early morning of the 25th of April 1975. The black-clad soldiers fired their guns everywhere inside the provincial town. Some of them walked in front of the houses and making the announcements through loudspeakers to order them to to leave their home. My question to you is, how did you learn of the evacuation? Did you learn it through any official announcement? Response. As I stated earlier, with the Khmer rules, no announcement was made official. Nonetheless, it was effective. Question. Did you know who issued such order for the black-clad soldiers to fire their guns and to shout at the people to leave their home? Response. Nobody knew about that. They only talked about the Upper Onka. Question. In that situation, did anyone appear to claim responsibility for such evacuation? Response. No. We only heard gunshots and people were chased to leave their home. Question. Now I'd like to touch upon the immediate event when there was evacuation. Based on your observation, can you tell us about that? Response. In the Battambang provincial town, the evacuation was in multi-directions. As on my side, I saw elderly people being evacuated as well, but I did not see anyone die. Question. During the chaotic situation when gunfires were heard, did any other family make any objection or protest not to leave? Response. I did not know, but I believed all of them left. Let me say that in Battambang, the evacuation was 1 week after the Tribunal government was defeated. It was not an immediate evacuation like in Phnom Penh. Question. when people were walking away from their home, did you see any monks living in a pagoda? Response. As for the monks, and that is from what I saw, it was after 1970, it was in 1976 that when the monks were asked to leave the pagoda. However, the number of the monks were in a limited number, and by 1976 all monks had been asked to leave the pagodas. Allow me to read your book again. EN in Khmer is 00678759, and in English 00369682. You wrote that another piece of information, which was rather scary, was about the bringing away the head of the monks from the pagoda. Ajahn Sang was a monk who was well known for his preacher against Sihanouk, and he really was a pro of the Republic government. My question is that who actually led that monk away? And what was the reason for him to be taken away?
Response. Prior to the evacuation of the population, Khmer Rouge had taken Abat Ajahn Sang and other abbots as well. Mr. Siu Hing, who was Nuon Chia's uncle, was also taken away. Mr. Siu Hing was paralyzed on one side of his body, and later on Abat Ajahn Sang was also taken. I have no idea who ordered such removal of these people, though I learned that it was the order from the upper echelon. Question. Do you know what happened to the Abbot and Mr. Siu Hing? Response. They were all killed. The President, it appears to us that your message did not go through the mic yet. You may repeat. Response. The Khmer Rouge brought a vehicle to carry them out to be executed. Both Mr. Siu Hing and Abat Ajahn Sang were executed. Prosecutor, I would read another document in Khmer, which is 00678762, and English 00369685. You said Samdak Pon, who was the abbot of Powil Pagoda, was evacuated. You talk about this monk, but my question is whether he was also evacuated. If so, what happened to him? Mr. Witness, please hold on. Counsel for Mr. Nuon Chea, you may proceed first.
Thank you, Mr. President. And again, it's the same issue or similar issue as the one I was raising earlier. It's about the sources of knowledge of this witness. And I will be a bit more outspoken this time. I object to this line of questioning. The prosecution is under an obligation to verify what the sources of knowledge of this witness are. When this witness states that these two individuals were executed, the prosecution needs to ask whether he saw this, whether he heard this, and if he heard it, when he heard it. Why is this an obligation for the prosecution? Witnesses are only allowed to testify as to what they saw or heard at the time. If the prosecution does not inquire as to when the witness learned about this news, the trial chamber cannot verify whether the witness is testifying as to his own knowledge at the time or whether he has possibly heard about these events later or read about them. Witness is clearly an educated man. He may know this information from other sources. Yes, we can verify this under our cross-examination, but it is the prosecution's obligation to make sure that the witness is testifying as to things that he learned at the time. So I object to not verifying the specific sources of knowledge of this witness, and I request the trial chamber to instruct the prosecution to consistently ask whether the witness saw certain events or whether he heard about them. If he heard about them, when did he hear about them?
The President, Counsel Canoas, you may proceed first.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Honors, good morning to everyone in and around the courtroom. First, let me begin by supporting the remarks and the objection by the Nuncia team, and also to supplement somewhat. The gentlemen on numerous occasions say they said, he's heard the they. And then the prosecution goes on to the next question, never identifying who's the they are. Now, my fundamental objection is this. We're supposed to be, and I say supposed to be because I don't recognize the system anymore, into this quote-unquote civil law French system, the French model of it, where the judges are to exhaustively question the witness to get as close to the truth as possible and then allow the parties. What you have done is, in a sense, turned over your authority to the prosecution to go forward. And it would seem to us that the prosecution should be exhaustively asking all the questions that you would have been asking. Now, let me go on, because I see that Judge Laverne seems somewhat amused with my comments. What I find problematic is not that the prosecution can say to us, you can cover this on cross-examine or when you question. What I find problematic is that we are not allowed to cross-examine. So in other words, what we've adopted is the worst of both systems. You've subcontracted your obligations to the prosecution, who's supposed to ask the questions to get as close to the truth as possible. And then you've tied our hands behind our back, because now you've turned them into a party, an adversarial party. And now you say you cannot cross-examine. So in other words, you take away the greatest legal engine to get as close to the truth as possible in the adversarial system, which is cross-examination, the ability to ask questions that are leading in nature. And then we have the time constraints. So we find that we've adopted, and I think Judge Lamond indicated as much in the press yesterday, that this is not the dish that we ordered, I believe he said. And I don't understand whether it is a clash of civilizations, of different legal traditions, but I understand both, and I've worked in both. And we've adopted the worst kind. And I would submit, Your Honors, that if you're going to have to look back at the transcript later on to make sense of it, it only assists you if the prosecution, when he hears they, to simply say, who is the they? I heard from someone who said such and such. Who is this someone? I understand. We're in the civil law system. hearsay evidence can come in abundance. But little value it has unless it can be tied in with independent indicia, other reliable evidence. And I submit that much of what the gentleman has testified thus far is based on speculation or on what they have said, they who will never be able to come here in court, who will never be called into court, which is also a denial of our right, our fundamental right, to confront the evidence. And so I don't think it takes too much time for the prosecution to say, is this based on your independent knowledge, or is it something that you've heard? And if you heard this, from whom? If he says, I don't remember, fine, at least we know. But I think this is the way it should be conducted. I don't think it should be left to us. And I think it's fair trial management. It'll make the proceedings much smoother, because then it takes away the time that we would require to go back to every question and say, who is the they? Who is this person? Where did you get this information? It can be done very easily from the prosecution, and it is their duty. And in fact, it was only 2 days ago that Mr. Smith said, how dare I accuse the prosecution of seeking to get a conviction when they're really trying to get as close to the truth as possible? Well, I'm trying to help them. I'm trying to help them by showing...
The President, Counsel, could you please be more surprised as to the matter being examined before us? Indeed, the matter you are raising now could have been raised during the court management session better. And according to the internal rules, which is Rule 91 of the ECCC, 91 bis, state very clearly about the orders of questioning the proceedings at trial. And we have already discussed this during the trial management meeting, how the proceedings are conducted. If you wish to lodge any application taking issue with any particular matter, make it precisely clear so that the chamber will have the ground for our ruling. And if you would wish to change the procedural formality or would like to amend parts of the internal rules, then you would be allowed to do so. But please be precise.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish I had the power to at least have my voice heard to change the rules. But be that as it may, my remarks go in support of the objection that was made, which is why we believe you should sustain the objection. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the time given to me to give a full explanation. Thank you.
The President, Mr. Co-Prosecutor, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. And if I can respond on behalf of the prosecution, none of the comments you've just heard from the defence actually amount to a valid and relevant evidential objection. If the defence take issue with the prosecution's lines of questioning or with the extent to which we've uncovered the truth, they're, as my colleague has already indicated, they're perfectly capable of taking the issue up in their examination of the witness. They're also obviously entitled to make submissions as to the probative value you should attach to any evidence. I think it is improper for the defence to be interjecting with effectively lectures about how witnesses should be questioned. Your Honours are perfectly capable of managing your proceedings. You've exercised your powers under Rule 91, as the President has indicated. There is absolutely nothing improper about this questioning. The defence are perfectly capable and have, in fact, examined witnesses extensively. Whether you call it cross-examination or simply examination, what you have seen, Your Honours, for the last 12 months, during which we haven't heard these complaints, is vigorous testing of the evidence, very competent questioning of all witnesses. We have not objected by and large to such questioning. We consider it appropriate, and I invite Your Honours to reject these objections and to allow us to continue.
The President, the objection by counsel concerning the line of questioning by the prosecution is not sustained. For the time being, the Chamber would not be examining the probative value of the evidence before us, and at the same time, co-prosecutors are reminded to make sure that the questions are precisely framed to make sure that they are conducive to ascertaining the truth, because we would like to see that the questions should be helpful for us to consider whether they have a probative value or not at the end. The co-prosecutor. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chunley, do you still remember the question I just put to you a moment ago? Indeed, I was asking you, and I may repeat it as follows. You stated in the book that Samdak Pon Sampit, who was the abbot of Boville Pagoda, do you know whether this abbot was evacuated or not after the 17th of April, and do you know what happened to him? Response. Samdak Pang Sampit was evacuated to his native village of Old Dambong commune. Later on, I met a former Buddhist monk who told me that Khmer Rouge had taken the monk when he was in his robe, and he disappeared ever since. The President, Mr. Co-Prosecutor, your mic is not activated. Co-Prosecutor, I have my final question, but we have a few small points in the question. Under ERN 00678813 in Khmer, English ERN 00369721 through 22. In that you wrote as follows. There was Khieu Samphan, the doctor in economy, graduated from a university in Paris. Khieu Samphan read the Constitution of the Democratic Cambodia that contained only 25 articles, 2 articles of which are well remembered by I myself. One of the articles states that Cambodian people of both genders have the right to follow any religion of their choice. And another article states that Cambodian people of both gender have the right to access to job opportunity equally. I would like to ask you a question as follows. Are you sure that it was Khieu Samphan who read out the Constitution? And how did you know Khieu Samphan? Response. I knew Khieu Samphan when he worked in Phnom Penh in his capacity as the head of the L'Observateur newspaper. And to the point that you just mentioned, it was relevant to then Prince Norodom Sihanouk as well. At that time, the Khmer Rouge, or at the Khmer Rouge military hospital where I had been asked to work, the Khmer Rouge tuned into the radio station, and the broadcast was out loud, and people were convened to listen to the radio broadcast. First, Prince Norodom Sihanouk said in Khmer that he would be resigning from his position as the head of state. Later on, he would proceed to speak in French. Then, Khieu Samphan was heard appointed as the head of the state presidium. And Khieu Samphan was then reading the constitution and the two articles that you stated, and the two articles I still remember vividly. Prosecutor: thank you, Mr. Witness. After Mr. Khieu Samphan stating that or pronouncing that both Cambodian of both gender had the right to follow any religion of their choice, did you observe that such statement was somehow maintained and that people could choose to believe what religion of their choice? Response: I already stated earlier that at Battambang, from the New Year of 1976, all Buddhist monks were dispelled from the pagodas. Question: what about Christians? Were they also banned from following their Christianity or religion? The President Counsel, please, witness, please hold on. Wait until you see the red mic, red light. Response: at Battambang in the city, there was a church, a big church, which was destroyed by the Khmer Rouge. Even a small bit of concrete that was part of the destroyed building would never be left to be seen there. Question: what about the head of the church or the bishop? What happened to him? The President, Mr. Witness, please be reminded that you can't speak before the red light is activated on the mic. Response: with regard to the bishop Samdatepo Im, I did not see this personally. However, he was killed. And I heard I knew that they built a church or a school at the place where this bishop was shot dead in Mongkol Borei district. Co-prosecutor: thank you, Mr. Witness. I have no further questions to put to you, and I thank you, Mr. Chunli, very much for assisting the Office of Co-prosecutors by responding to my questions. However, my colleague would like to have a few more questions to you as well. Thank you, Mr. President. I would like now to cede the floor to my colleague, please.
Good morning to you, Dr. Hun Chun Lee. My colleague has already introduced me. My name is Tariq Abdul Haq, and I will continue your questioning on behalf of the co-prosecutors. Now, just in the limited time I think we may have before the break, if I could return to the events of the 17th of April and the days following the 17th of April, and see if we can explore additional events that you've discussed in your book. And if I can take you first to the following passage in the book. This is at Khmer ERN 00678-765 and English ERN 00369-686, and to perhaps assist you in locating the passage. It is a discussion of a meeting which was held on the 24th of April in 1975 at the civilian Battambang Hospital. And I will read just only one or two passages and see if you could assist us further with that. You mentioned that Kek Pen alias Mitsu came to the civilian Battambang Hospital and briefly met Dr. Kim Sam, hospital director, and Dr. Pong Kim Seah, the provincial health director. Following this, a meeting was called, and I'm paraphrasing now, Mitsu chaired the meeting. You indicate that he gave a speech, and following that speech, or as part of that speech rather, he said the following: in this case, Angkar announces the dismissal of the present hospital director and requests you to elect a new hospital director among janitors and cleaners, because these people are also from the poor peasant class. You attended this meeting. Could I ask you to describe for us what you understood to be the reason for the dismissal of Dr. Kim Sam and appointment, or rather election, of a janitor which followed?
Response. Comrade Su was also known as Kek Pen. He was a former professor who had been teaching at some high schools in provinces, so he was an intellectual. And during the meeting, which he attended when he convened other medical personnel to attend, no one understood what was being said, or everyone took that as a surprise, rather. He said that revolution derives from peasant class, and he said that peasant class could lead all fields, including the health sector. That's why the head of the hospital was expelled, and that another person was installed without proper medical profession. A lot of medical workers were not happy with this decision, and the next morning they were evacuated to work in the paddy fields, and I don't understand what happened exactly.
Mr. President, I'm mindful of the time. Would you like me to continue, or should we take a break?
The President, thank you, Mr. Co-Prosecutor. Indeed, it is now appropriate moment for the lunch adjournment. The Chamber will adjourn until 1:30 p.m. Court officer is now instructed to assist Mr. Witness during this adjournment and have him return to the courtroom when the next session resumes. Counsel for Mr. Nuon Chea, you may now proceed.
Nuon Chea is suffering from a headache, back pain, and a lack of concentration, and would like to follow this afternoon's proceedings from the holding cell. We have prepared the waiver.
The President, the Chamber notes the request by Mr. Nuon Chea through his counsel, in which he has asked that he be excused and allowed to observe the proceedings from his holding cell for the remainder of the day due to his health concerns. The request is substantiated and that he is now granted such a permission to observe the proceedings from his holding cell through audiovisual means for the remainder of the day. Mr. Nuon Chea has precisely waived his right to be present in the courtroom. The Chamber would like to ask that counsel for Mr. Nuon Chea produce this waiver given thumbprint or signed by Mr. Nuon Chea in due course. AV booth officers are now instructed to ensure that the audio-visual equipment is well connected to Mr. Nuon Chea holding cell so that he can observe the proceedings from there. Security personnel are now instructed to bring Mr. Nuon Chea and Khieu Samphan to their respective holding cell and have Mr. Khieu Samphan only return to the courtroom by the afternoon when the next session resumes at 1:30 p.m. The court is adjourned.